welcome to Media Melanie Talks TV. I'm Melanie, and today I'm back to talk about Bad Sisters Season 2, Episode 7, How to Pick a Prick. This is the penultimate episode of the season. We only have one episode left. And this has been a really fun season, especially for a show that wasn't even expected to have one. I think Sharon Horgan's done a really great job telling this story. And it does seem pretty clear where things are going in the final episode. However, as we saw in season 1, the finale had a pretty major reveal. So there could still be something that we're not quite sure about. It does seem like Ian/Cormac will be the body in the trunk. But could there be more to it? We did learn in this episode that, in fact, Ian/Cormac had no sister. He was not grieving anybody, but he is a corrupt cop. He is a gambler. He is an abuser. He hits the terrible person trifecta. Cormac, you are a real rat bastard. And my sympathies go out to Grace, even though she's no longer with us, for picking two really bad guys. That makes me really sad, especially for her daughter, who ultimately is going to find out all of the things that have transpired. And my biggest hope, regardless of if we get another season of Bad Sisters or not, and I know this is fictional, but I hope Blonde grows up and does not pick a prick and breaks the cycle. That is like the biggest thing that I really want to see moving forward for the Garveys in a distant future. Now, I do have a little bit of a theory, and this might be kind of out there, but given that we did learn about Ian/Cormac being this really bad guy, complete rat bastard, he's got a wife. When Eva went and knocked on the door, I could tell that obviously this woman knew who he was. The woman at the convenience store who told Eva where Cormac Sweeney lived, obviously, he lived there. I was not shocked when the wife closed the door, went upstairs. Ian, of course, Cormac, is there with his children, and she says something like, "You promised they would never come looking for us or near our kids." We know that Ian abused his wife, and she withdrew the report. Now, what if the wife could be part of the body in the trunk if it is Ian? What if one of the Garvey sisters goes over there and appeals to her emotions and says, "Hey, your husband's a bad dude"? I mean, the Garveys don't even know about the abuse part yet. Of course, Houlihan does. But what if they confront her and somehow things come to a head? And what if she's part of the death? What if Cormac's wife actually is the one who kills him, and then the Garveys dispose of the body, and it becomes this bigger scheme, this bigger conspiracy? Now, that would be quite the reveal, because one thing we know about the Garveys is, yeah, I mean, Grace did kill JP, but the rest of the sisters haven't actually killed anybody. Yeah, they've done some pretty questionable things. They've covered up some stuff. Angelica almost died, and they've never reported it to the authorities. But it would make sense that they don't actually kill anybody again. They're just part of the cover-up. So I'm interested to see how that all plays out. And wouldn't it be interesting if Cormac's wife was in fact part of his death, and that is somehow why he ends up in the trunk? I went back and I watched that first scene of the episode with them at the cliff. And again, it is not Eva's car. So whose car is it? Is it Cormac's car? Could it be his wife's car? I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there because I always like to think that there's going to be more, because it does seem pretty obvious now going into the finale that it's Ian in the trunk, which is fine because we've had some pretty solid red herrings throughout this season. All fingers were pointing to the wagon. They really made us hate Angelica Collins and did a great job. And again, Fiona Shaw did a wonderful job playing this character. I wasn't shocked to see that Angelica was alive because, again, she did have a life jacket. The head injury did seem pretty substantial. It takes away a level of guilt for the Garveys. Of course, they're still going to feel guilty for not reporting it, but I would imagine that it was a huge weight lifted when they did find out that Angelica was alive. And seriously, Houlihan, you should have looked into things a little bit more, because it's not very credible where you're questioning the Garvey sisters about this footage, accusing them of things, when in fact Angelica is alive after all. So I do think she jumped the gun. She has been this dog with a bone this entire season. Very annoying at times, very young, showing that she is green to being a Garda officer. And I'm not saying I really like Loftus either, but I kind of would have rather have seen Loftus get this win and solve this case instead of Houlihan. But we will see how things resolve in the next episode. A big part of this episode was Eva's guilt over this whole entire situation. Like she said, she followed her Fanny. She got played, but she got played by a guy who's a bad guy. Again, he's a gambler. He's an abuser. He is a corrupt cop. He hits that prick trifecta. So as much as I would like to think that I wouldn't fall for such a scheme by such a bad person, grief does pretty crazy things to a person. And I don't think it's out of the realm that she did fall for Ian. I mean, he's obviously very good at being a bad guy and playing to people's emotions. I mean, he was able to swoop in and marry Grace pretty quickly after JP had died. So he is charming AF. He knows what he's doing. There was obviously a lot of planning for this, but my big question about that too is, how did his wife feel about this? If she was in fact knowledgeable about what he was doing, she's just okay with that? I mean, it must have been out of desperation, obviously, right? Ian got kicked off the force, Cormac got kicked off the force, and maybe they were really desperate for money, but I just could not swallow a wife being okay with her husband posing as somebody else to get all of this money. In fact, I give Eva way more of a pass than his wife, which does make me think maybe she comes into play somehow. The look on her face when Grace's picture came up when Eva showed it to her at the front door, I don't know. I think there's more there with his wife, so I am interested to see. And just a note, I went back to the episode where they showed the picture of Cormac's sister, and in fact, it was his wife, which also seems a little careless to me, because if somebody was actually looking into this, why is he keeping a picture of his wife there and saying it's his sister? To me, it seems like that's something that could have been pretty easily discovered, although if nobody was really looking at him, then I don't know. But Ian, you are just a bad guy. I was expecting him to be a part of this, but not like this. The reveal that he was actually a police officer, that was pretty solid. And they did a really great job of setting this story up from the beginning. We've had Eva turning 50. She's going through menopause. They're talking about her being on Hinge and dating and, just being alone at her age. And so there is a small sense of, I guess, desperation, even though that doesn't really sound very nice. But Eva was desperate for connection. She was desperate for a partner. So they set that table well in terms of Eva eventually falling for Ian's charms. And watching when she got the notification about the bank transfer, I mean, I could feel her stomach sinking through the screen. And then the bank scene, which is terrible enough that she has to go there to find out that the money is gone. But when those receipts poured out of her wallet, I'm just thinking, this is such a small moment, but that's me. I'm the person with receipts coming out of their purse. I'm not the most organized person sometimes, so it was just a really small moment that fed into her frustration and, how flustered she was over this. And it made her look like kind of a fool to these people at the bank who are like, hey, that's your signature, right? You signed the form. She's like, yeah, I signed the form. But how was she supposed to know Ian was going to do that? It did seem a little soon for this paperwork transfer, especially since they had just slept together. But again, grief. Eva wants connection. So we're going to give Eva a pass for this because you can see it is hitting her very hard. I mean, she is grieving even more now over the loss of the money and the trust and the fact that she's the guardian to Blonde and now her money's all gone. I did like seeing the sisters comforting her because I do think it could have gone in the other direction and they could have really isolated her and come at her for all of this. But they are a tight family unit, so they are going to work together. Of course, BB's like, hey, do not go and meet this Cormac guy. Like, don't do that, of course. She goes. There is nothing that is going to stop Eva from trying to make this situation right. Now, the other situation, of course, Angelica in the hospital. We see Ursula go there to try to figure out exactly what Angelica is going to say to the Garda. And I did think it was funny when she compared herself to Jonah being in a whale for 3 days and she was out there for 3 hours. I mean, you know what? We'll give her a pass too because she's been through a lot. And great red herrings, making us all hate Angelica, thinking Angelica's the big bad, the one in the trunk. But as I've been saying, it also seemed too soon and a little too obvious that it was in fact her. But the way the story played out, it was really smart and maybe not fully believable at all times. But I'm okay with it because this season has been entertaining. I've looked forward to the episodes each week, and I am very excited to see how things play out. Now, we also learned that Angelica was in fact friends with Grace. And then Ian swoops in, affects their friendship, and also derailed any chance for Roger and Grace to get together, which I think Angelica probably would have hoped for if she was friends with Grace. So it's too bad that Angelica didn't impart this information about Ian to the Garvey sisters sooner, but she was being set up to be this villain. So, I mean, I get it. And you know what? Speaking of Roger, I would like to issue an apology for thinking that he had any part in this because by all counts, the guy's got a heart of gold. And you know what? He's a little bit desperate too, right? He's asked out so many of the Garvey sisters. He's been rejected. But you know what? He's still a good guy. Now, back to the whole investigation situation. I said in a couple videos ago, why is Ian being so helpful? He seemed way too invested in this situation. And of course, now we know why. Him giving that USB stick to Houlihan, I just feel like he's been 2 to 3 steps ahead of everybody. The fact that he offered to go get the footage and that he was even turning these gears to know to go and do that. I mean, it does show that, yes, he was a police officer and who knows what other cover-ups he's been involved with. His record did show fraud. The guy's actually pretty smart. And as much as I hate him and I do think he is the prick trifecta again, he did a good job of being a bad guy. He played a good bad guy. He's easy on the eyes. Nobody wants to think the really hot guy's the bad guy, like the lady with the footage said, right? She said, oh, serial killers can be, these attractive men. And he's like, oh, I'm not a serial killer. Yeah, you're not a serial killer, dude, but you're still a pretty bad guy. And things are really coming to a head with this investigation, both with Houlihan and with the Garvey sisters. They're both simultaneously finding out more information about Cormac, who he is. So I do think things are going to come to a head in the next episode. And the tension between Houlihan and Loftus was just palpable. I thought she was going to go up on that stage and she was going to out him to everybody at his retirement, which really kind of sucks, right? Because he was already made to look a little bit of a fool after exhuming JP's body last season. So, you know what? I was proud of Houlihan for letting him go out on a good note, especially when his daughter stood next to him and Houlihan looked her in the eyes. She did the right thing, which is kind of surprising because she's very self-serving and in it for herself. And the phrase I've used this whole season, dog with a bone, I mean, it could not describe her more. And it does seem like she's going to solve this case. And in a way, I don't want her to get the satisfaction of doing that because, I don't know, I'm just not a fan. But it does seem like she will be the one to put the pieces together. Unless Houlihan and Loftus do end up pairing up despite the fact that he is retired. Ursula, of course, went to him asking for help and then figured out that he was the one that took the money in the first place. So maybe not, but I'm not fully convinced that Loftus is retired at this point. There's one episode left for him and Houlihan to pair up and potentially solve this case. And I would rather see Loftus get the credit than Houlihan. So that is something that I'm rooting for. Okay, on to Becca and Joe and Matt. You guys, there's nothing I wanted more than to see Becca and Matt together. I love Daryl McCormick. These two characters have been through so much. And of course, now Becca's pregnant with Joe's baby. Joe, of course, questioned whether it was his or not. Of course, it is. I guess Matt did the right thing and Becca did the right thing by saying that she should raise this baby with Joe. But is it the right thing to let the person that you really love go? Granted, yes, they've been through a lot together. There are some secrets between them, but sometimes those secrets or experiences really can create this unbreakable bond. So even though it does seem like Becca and Joe are going to get together, I don't know, I'm still kind of hoping that her and Matt find a way back together. I mean, whatever, Joe's okay, kind of annoying, not my favorite, but it is clear he cares about Becca. He did come back to the Garveys and say, hey, this guy Ian is a gambler, so he's trying to help. He's trying to do the right thing. So I guess, however, it ends up playing out fine, but I was really hoping for the Matt and Becca together situation. All right, so the next episode is called Cliffhanger, aptly named given that we see the Garveys on a cliff with a body trying to figure out what to do. The episode description reads, as Houlihan discovers shocking revelations, the sisters face an impossible situation. The thumbnail shows Bibi, Becca, and Eva looking shocked inside of a house sitting on the floor. What is the big shock? Is it a confrontation with Ian? Could my theory that the wife is involved somehow come into play? Whose car are they driving? Is it Cormac's car? We do still have some questions to answer. And the biggest one being, are they going to throw this body over the cliff? Or is it still alive? We did see a little bit of a twitch. What if they do open the trunk, take off this cow robe, and see that the body is alive? Are they going to be able to actually kill somebody if he's not already dead? And if he is already dead, were they the ones to kill him? Was it an accident? So that will alleviate some of the guilt and keep the Garveys on the innocent side of things. I am dying to find out, and I'm kind of sad the season's almost over. 8 episodes does seem like a good amount of television. They're not forcing things. There was very little filler or fluff this season, which I definitely appreciate. Were there some moments that seemed maybe a little unbelievable? Yes, but overall, the entertainment factor, I found the show very engaging. I love the Garvey sisters. And I really appreciate Sharon Horgan and her writing brilliance to be able to come up with another story that makes sense for the Garvey sisters. And just circling back again, it does bum me out that it makes Grace be this meek type of person who picks 2 abusers. Ian fooled her. He pulled the wool over her eyes. And it's hard to say exactly when things started getting bad with JP. Maybe he was a good guy in the first place, and maybe it's just bad luck. And then Grace ended up dead. Now, Grace being dead, back to that again, is it possible that Ian was in fact somehow guilty? Was Grace going to see him, to confront him? Did she find out who he was? Did Ian run her off of the road and cause her death? And speaking of cliffhanger, we got a cliffhanger at the end of this episode as well. I could not believe that Ian showed up with Blonde. What a jerk. Is he just trying to show his hand and say, hey, you can threaten me and try to take this money back all you want, but I know where she goes to school. I know what you guys did. I know what you guys helped cover up. It does seem like he's trying to blackmail them into not getting the money back by threatening a teenager. I mean, this guy just sinks to new lows every single episode. And what is this big standoff going to culminate in? Obviously, something big is going to happen. I would imagine the Garvey sisters are all going to show up at some point. Maybe things do come to a head between Eva and Ian. Could Blonde somehow be involved? Could she end up overhearing what's happening and say, I don't know, bonking him over the head or something? And then the sisters have to cover up what Blonde did to this guy who hurt and maybe even killed her mom. So lots of resolution to come in this next episode. And I just want to make one quick note on Irish television. I am obsessed. I've recently watched Say Nothing, which was a very serious show. Then I watched Derry Girls, which was very comedic, but had some background serious subject nature surrounding the Troubles in Ireland. And then also Normal People, The Fall, and also Catastrophe, which is by Sharon Horgan, but actually takes place in London. All of these shows are just so fantastic. So if you like Bad Sisters, those may be a couple of shows that you could check out as well. I am also covering Silo on Apple TV Plus right now, so if you're watching, be sure to check out my coverage on that, along with Dexter Original Sin on Paramount Plus with Showtime. We've got 1 episode so far, 2 more coming up. They've actually changed the air dates to have episodes 2 and 3 stream this week. So we get 2 episodes of Dexter Original Sin. I'll be back to cover those. Severance is coming in January on Apple TV, which I am very excited to cover. We've got White Lotus coming up in February. So much good TV. I'm also recording my top 10 TV shows of 2024 tonight, along with Craig Elston from 97.3 The Fan in San Diego. I do a radio segment each week where I recommend streaming TV shows. So it'll be fun to sit down with Craig so we can highlight more TV shows that we've really enjoyed this year. So please be sure to hit that subscribe button, go ahead and like this video, and drop a comment and let me know how you think things will be resolved next week. Do you think my theory about Cormac's wife being involved has any meat on the bone? I'm curious, and I can't wait to see how things end up next week. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you tuning in. Be sure to come and check out my other videos. Media Melanie, clicking off.